In 3, 2, 1.
Are we live? We're live!
We're
live, guys! So thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Dude, cheers.
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 And guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers, and thank you for drinking tea with us. By the way, just before we get started, if you want to drink some more tea,
In 3,
there you
2,
go, okay?
1.
Hot
Yeah.
tea, iced tea, right?
Yes.
Here's the thing. I mean, does your nationality matter?
Not at all, right?
But we have a problem in today's world, don't we, Rudy?
Yeah, we do. We do have a lot of students, and we do have a lot of parents in schools who actually seek native speakers to become language teachers. But we're here today to share with you guys some hints and some tips on why being a native speaker doesn't necessarily make a fantastic language teacher.
Yeah. And you know what? I want to share something that happened to me on LinkedIn a couple of years ago. And
I
Rudy
remember
knows,
that.
right? So I decided to post something about native speakerism being, well, it's not a qualification really. And I posted something on LinkedIn, and the very first thing that I posted was actually the headline of a BBC article that said that native speakers are the world's worst communicators. And as you can probably imagine, a lot of people got angry at me. Like, okay, maybe you don't have to be a native speaker to be a great teacher, but we're not the world's worst communicators. It turns out that in a world where English is used as a lingua franca, where we have more non-native speakers than native speakers,
Yep.
communicating globally, everywhere, yes, if you are a native speaker, you are probably monolingual. You want people to adapt to you. You don't adapt to everyone else, and that makes you a poor communicator, right, Rudy?
Yes, because if we consider verbal communication, when we need to communicate, we need to sacrifice certain linguistic features in order to make this communication dynamic. So for instance, if we consider here that everybody has Portuguese as L1, for instance, okay? If it's not, that's fine, but let's consider...
Some people don't,
I know,
apparently.
but let's consider our native languages here. When you engage in verbal communication anywhere here throughout this entire event, you have to make some negotiations, because that's what we do when we communicate. And it has to be fast, and it has to be dynamic. And at the same time, we also have to convey our message. And we are going to sacrifice constructions, we're going to sacrifice sounds, we're going to sacrifice some words in order to get this conversation going.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this makes us very native speakers, very poor communicators, but of course it's not going to be, maybe not going to be as sophisticated as it should, because of these negotiations and these sacrifices that we have to make, right?
Yeah. But here's the thing. I think, Rudy's talking about Portuguese. Portuguese has a different status in the world. It's not a lingua franca, right? And if you look at the research, especially coming from Jennifer Jenkins, University of Southampton, for example, English as a lingua franca, there are certain features of language that make it more or less intelligible. And when you're communicating globally, you have to aim or go for intelligibility, which basically means being able to understand and be understood, So if you're not intelligible, you hinder communication breakdown, right?
Yeah.
What happens is that a lot of native speakers from different parts of the world are not very intelligible. So, and I'm sure all of you here know someone who comes from whatever country, an Anglophone country, right? They have English as the first official language, but it's very hard for people to understand them, right? So why are they better equipped to be a teacher than us, who actually study how to teach the language? And that's a whole different game, right?
A completely different game, especially when it comes to access to language. Still talking about native speakers. She's a friend of mine. We studied she was already a doctor when I was at Edinburgh, but Professor Eva Dabrowska, she has a study on aptitude. And she found out in that study that people who have access or who had access to proper education up until the highest ranks of formal education, they have access, they've had access to more sophisticated constructions. And those who never had access to proper higher ranks of education, they didn't have access to those sophisticated constructions. So this means that if you go on the streets here in Brazil, for instance, and if you ask anyone to be very linguistically sophisticated, maybe this person is not going to be able to do that. But again, that doesn't make a native speaker a perfect teacher, but this person can be, because it's not only about the language. One thing that we are going to discuss here today, we have an advantage because we, here in Brazil, we speak the native language of our students.
Yes.
Meaning that there's a big chance that we share the same mental representations that our students have, because language is nothing more than a tool that we use to express whatever is going on in our mind. All right?
That's true.
And we have this advantage that maybe a native speaker is not going to have, let's consider a monolingual native speaker. Maybe this person is not going to share the same mental representations.
And we were talking about translanguaging. Are you aware of translanguaging nowadays? So, and we know from research that translanguaging is actually a natural phenomenon that, if you've been here long enough talking to your peers, you probably translanguaged a lot, right? You use Portuguese, English, whatever other languages, and, not just verbal languages, but also body language to communicate, to convey meaning, right?
Yeah.
And we know that we can do that quite easily and seamlessly regarding the interlocutor. So we know when we can do that and get understood, right? And we know when we don't have to do that, when we cannot do that. And I think a common misconception when we are speaking of bilingual education is that parents think because kids are mixing the codes and everything that we're basically messing with their brains, right?
Yeah.
We're destroying their brains.
Yes.
But that's not true, because when we grow, we know which contexts we can communicate in this or that language, or we can mix both languages. So it's an advantage. From a neuroscientific perspective, actually, we now know, we've known for a couple of, I would say at least 2 decades, since Ellen Bialystok published her paper in 2004.
This name is very important, Ellen Bialystok.
Ellen
I'm going to tell you guys
Bialystok,
something
by the way.
very cool at the end of this
Canada.
this session, but Ellen Bialystok is a very important
And we're trying
name.
to get her to do a talk with us, right, Rudy? Well, maybe you guys can help. How about you say, Ellen Bialystok, come to Brazil. Everybody together. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that didn't work. maybe next time. Yeah, we'll rehearse, okay? But the thing is, we know for a fact that the bilingual experience benefits the brain.
Oh, yeah.
We have a very interesting correlation between brain executive functions, like inhibitory control, working memory, cognitive flexibility, and the bilingual brain.
Yes.
So bilingualism is awesome, and translanguaging is really part of bilingualism.
Exactly. And one thing has to be very clear here. When we talk about translanguaging, we're not talking translanguaging as a method. I know many people try to say that this is a method. I don't like this kind of term for translanguaging, because this is something that we do once we master languages. Because translanguaging is when we use a different language purposely, because that specific part is going to convey a message that maybe that official language or the current language can't. So that's translanguaging, and we do this all the time. I know I've mentioned this song all the time.
Yeah.
Do you know the Beatles? Have you ever heard of the Beatles, the band?
Yeah, they have a band from the UK.
I think they're famous. I think they're famous. They've got a lot of potential, those kids.
Yeah.
And they have a very famous song called Michelle.
Yeah.
And there's a part of the song that Paul uses French.
Yeah.
Why does Paul use French?
Yeah.
Because French is considered the language of love, and that's a romantic song. He could have used English. He could have continued using English, because that's the language of the entire song. But no, he decided to use French because he was trying to convey passion, because that's a very passionate song and it's a very romantic song. That's translanguaging. So he was using English, then he turned to French for a specific reason, and then he went back to English again. That's translanguaging. And there's one more thing about native speakerism, because we're not here to talk about translanguaging, right? Basically, what we need to do, especially here in Brazil, we're talking about the Brazilian scenario. As language teachers, what we need to do, we need to make our students access their mental representations. What is mental representations? Every concept that we have in our mind, everything, okay? We have concepts in our minds, and we need to make our students access those things. And then they're going to use the language to represent those concepts, right? When they come to our classes, they already have those concepts. It's there. It's not like, okay, I'm going to learn English or I'm going to learn Spanish as a second language, whatever language we talk about here.
That's so true.
It's not like they're going to delete those concepts. They bring those concepts to the classroom.
Yeah.
And again, remember the advantage that we have because we share many concepts with them. We're going to be able to help our students access those concepts and then tell them, you know that concept you have, that's how you express that in this language.
Yeah. And you know what? Something you were talking about, and we discussed this before in a different episode, I think, which is, I think we've all been infected with the communicative approach virus, right? We've been infected, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of people here probably still believe that you should ban L1 from the classroom, right? Yes. Were you taught like that? That people should not use L1 in the classroom, like ever in the past? Okay. And so again, when we go back to native speakerism and translanguaging, that's not very sound, pedagogically speaking, you know, because we have research showing that, biliteracy is a thing. So if you reinforce your L1, I mean, as you are learning an additional language, we shouldn't even call it a second language anymore. We should call it an additional language. Your L1 can help. It's a very important tool for you to, be able to learn more effectively. And like what Rudy said, here's an example. We always talk about present perfect, right?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever taught present perfect? How long did it take you to explain how to use present perfect using L2, using English?
Like
it took a very long time, right?
Long minutes.
And you know what? I know for a fact, and I'm going to talk about that in a session later today, that you caused something that cognitive psychology calls cognitive overload, So basically, we're trying to explain things in very sophisticated language to, A2 students, maybe. And they were not able to understand 90% of what you said. So you filled up their working memory. You wasted 10, 15 minutes of your lesson, and they didn't get it.
Yeah.
And you could have just compared to Portuguese and actually say, well, it means the same thing as this one, but this one has no specific or specified time marker, and we use it, for this and that. And you could have saved a lot of time and avoided cognitive overload.
And
right?
how long did it take to do that? Like seconds.
Because of the communicative. Yeah.
Seconds of Portuguese.
Yeah.
And if you have a 60-minute class or a 90-minute class, you took what? 10 seconds to do that. Your students got the message.
Yeah.
They know how to use present perfect now because when you compare it to their first language, it's going to be like, okay, I know how to use that in my language.
Yeah.
This is how I do it in this language. Great. Now I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that when you do that, they're going to be masters in whatever kind of tense we're talking about here. But there is a big chance that you maximize the possibility of absorption from your students. And there's one more thing that really counts in this whole conversation about native speakerism. Here in Brazil, for some reason, I don't know the reason, but for some reason, people consider good or bad English when a person pronounces everything correctly or sounds like a native speaker.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched any TED video? Any?
Yeah.
TED. You know TED? TED videos?
TED videos, yeah.
So they have speakers from all over the world. not always
We're
native
trying
speakers.
to take Chá Pedagógico to TED, by the way.
Oh, that
You
would
can help
be,
us with
you
it.
can help us with that, exactly. Or maybe TEDx, right?
TEDx, yeah, we can start there.
Yeah.
And can I spoil the moment very quickly and just ask Rudy to show his socks?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, guys.
it's 3PO.
Yeah, it has C3PO socks, okay?
That's how nerdy
he's
I
a
am.
geek, yes.
That's how nerdy I am.
Sorry, bro. Go ahead. We do that, you know?
We
Yeah,
do that.
Yeah.
So this is why a lot of people have this preference for native speakers, because they think that, okay, so if I have a native speaker as a teacher, this native speaker is going to have a perfect pronunciation. And again, what is a perfect pronunciation?
Yeah. According to
Yes.
whom, right?
According to whom?
Yeah.
Exactly. So maybe a person, I lived in Scotland, my master's was in Scotland.
Yeah.
The place that I lived in Scotland, for some reason, they had 5 different dialects. So 5 different types of pronunciation in that area. You know,
Right.
because again, we're not dealing with pronunciation or anything like that, but mainly, I'm going to say UK because I don't know every country in Europe, but in the UK,
In Bristol, it was different there.
yes, so but because there they link the pronunciation to social status, social economic,
Social class, yeah.
social class,
Yeah,
and all
definitely.
these things. And I was exposed to 5 different ways of speaking English.
Yeah.
And there was a moment that I was like, I had a professor there. He was a true Scot. I couldn't understand what he
Yeah.
said.
But
I
you know,
couldn't.
we can go
Do
further.
you
I
speak
mean,
English?
Yeah.
Is that the standard pronunciation? So according to
Is
who?
he intelligible? Because I
Not for
remember
me.
asking my students, man, come on. I remember I asked my students to analyze the level of English of 5 different people, famous people. I think 5 or 4 different people. So I got Adele. Okay, and you know what video I'm talking about, right? So I got Adele, and then I got Chimamanda, who's from, do you know where she's from? Nigeria. I got Diego Luna,
Oh, I
who's
know
a
this
Mexican actor who was on Star Wars, by the way, you know, yeah. Who else? And I got Christoph Waltz, you know. He's from Austria, right?
He's from Austria.
It was in Inglourious Bastards, yeah. And I asked my students to analyze who was more intelligible. Who would you like to have classes with? You know, if they were properly qualified, trained teachers, yeah. And most of them said Chimamanda or Christoph Waltz, but not Adele because she was not intelligible. But again, so why, when we're talking about native speakerism, when we're talking about native speakers are the best ideal models, you know, that we have to follow, why don't we talk about Nigerians? They are native speakers. What about
people from India?
Yeah, think about Bangladesh, right?
Yes.
Bangladesh, people from Bangladesh, they are native speakers. Did you know that? South Africa,
Yeah.
yeah, they're actually, I think there are more than 60
You're not
countries.
native speakers.
Yeah.
We're not native speakers. Maybe we do have native speakers
Yeah.
of English in this room right now, but many of us are not. And I can guarantee that we are very qualified to be language teachers.
You are here,
English
after
teachers.
all. Yeah.
You take courses. We take courses.
You
You're
come to
here.
conferences.
You come to conferences. We
Yeah.
go to conferences. You
Yeah.
know? So, yeah, why are we not qualified to be teachers?
Why
right?
do those job
And
ads in
we
Asia?
haven't
Come
used
on,
we
guys.
haven't used any Greek word.
Oh, we have, but
We
we
have?
probably, yeah. When we say a Greek word, we have to drink.
Yeah.
Sorry, we
Say
forgot
something.
about that. Yeah, it's something. Yeah, we haven't told them. but here's something. Yeah, this is very important. Native speakerism is not really about the best possible models. Okay, that your students should look up to and then follow. It's really about imperialism. You know,
Yeah.
because there are 2 models that we favor, that native speakerism favors. And those models are received pronunciation, RP, from the UK, right? Queen's English, or the King's English now, right? The Queen is dead, folks. Get over it.
Is she?
Okay, she is.
It's not like Michael Jackson or Elvis.
Well, I don't. We never know, right? But and also standard American English, whatever the heck that is, right? Standard American English. So is that Julia Roberts or Brad Pitt? I don't know. But anyway, why are those the only 2 accepted models around the world.
Exactly.
If you go anywhere, if here in Brazil, in Asia, job ads, they don't care about qualification. A lot of them, they care about where you were born.
Yeah.
And that makes you a good teacher.
Yes. Does it?
That's
Right?
stupid.
And it's interesting that you mentioned the standard. There's a very nice book by David Crystal called Englishes. And it's interesting because it says, yes, there is a standard for English. My standard, his standard, your standard, maybe your standard. So every language has a standard. The standard is within the speaker. And yesterday, John from British Council, he talked about the ownership of language. I mean,
that's so true.
I am I'm a speaker of Portuguese. Does that mean that I own the Portuguese language and I am the full possessor of linguistic knowledge of Portuguese? Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah.
All right. So if one day Portuguese becomes very popular around the world, we're going to see a lot of people speaking Portuguese, but they are going to bring their own linguistic identities.
Yeah. And I think that's what's happening. We're synchronized, right?
Yeah.
That's what's happening. We're actually trying to erase our own identities to conform to a standard that doesn't make any sense in a world where we have more non-native speakers than native speakers.
Oh yeah.
Using English as a global language, as a lingua franca. So why do we have to adapt to something that you're not very likely to come across? Are you going to come across someone who sounds exactly like the king?
Harry Potter. Especially, that's something very interesting. A lot of students and a lot of people want to copy the pronunciation of Harry Potter. But what they don't know is that's the fancy pronunciation. Yeah. That's for high class in the UK. That's a high class pronunciation in the UK.
Ask them about Glasgow.
Ask me about Edinburgh. I live in Edinburgh.
Blinders, remember?
Yeah. If you go to Edinburgh, there was a person in my department. She was there every day. She worked in the university. Yeah. And I said good morning every day. And they don't say good morning. They say good day. But it's not good day.
Yeah.
It's good day. Have a good day. Today.
But it's fun. We love it.
Today is a good day.
That's to drink beer, eh?
Drink beer.
Right?
Yeah. So once again, because we need to wrap up, right?
We have to
know you would like to stay forever.
We have 60-minute episodes, and they only gave us 30 minutes. That's so not fair, right?
But we do have some announcements today, right?
We do. And so, 2 announcements, and I really want you to help us, guys, okay? Do you want to have a mug? Do you want to get a Chá Pedagógico mug?
There are only 3 in the world. Not yours, lyrically. Yours is yours. But there are only 3 in the world.
There are only 3 in the world, and this one can be yours, okay? So make sure you take pictures. Did you take pictures? Make sure you tag Disal, Distribuidora, our sponsor. We have our podcast on their channel last Sunday of every month at 6 p.m. Make sure you tag ELT. eFuture Global, because
no, it's eFuture Korea.
I mean, it can be both, right, Sue? It can be eFuture.global is better, but if you tag eFuture Korea, that works too. Okay, because they sponsored this banner, and
they've been helping us.
Did you recognize those 2?
I used to have long hair.
Us.
I don't anymore, but I used to.
But the cool thing about this banner, I have to mention Guilherme Scarpin.
Yes.
He was the artist who did this. He's amazing. He was one of my students. And he actually summarized every episode of Chá Pedagógico
the first 6 episodes
on Gisal's YouTube channel. And we're going to get him to summarize the others, right?
Yes.
Including this one. So you have more work coming your way, Guilherme.
Make sure you follow both Disal and eFuture's Instagram account. Tag them. Follow Andre's account on Instagram.
The Learning Cosmos.
Follow me and try to tag me because apparently it wasn't working for some reason.
Man. Just let them know you don't want people
tagging you.
I'm
weird. But anyway.
You're antisocial.
So this is one thing. And then at the end of the day today, we're going to be live on Instagram and we're going to tell who is going to be the winner
of the mug.
And 2 amazing books.
Yeah.
O Cérebro da Criança.
Yep.
by Siegel and Bryson.
And this one is very important too, especially now.
Oh, okay. Manual de Sobrevivência para o Professor Esgotado by
That basically means everybody here.
Okay. Disal, thank you so much for providing the books.
Yes. And also you get this from eFuture. Thank you very much, Sue Kim, who's right there filming us.
Yes.
Thank you for being here, Sue. And thank you for sponsoring the banner. It looks good, right?
Yeah. So this is one thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, oh yeah, yes. We are going right now.
Yeah.
We're launching a members club for Chá Pedagógico on Patreon. All right.
Yes.
So this is an exclusive club where we're going to upload very specific and exclusive content.
Yeah.
We're going to have actually also a study group.
That's true.
And remember, I told you to keep the words LMBL stock, because the pilot for the study group, we're going to hand out some of her research, and we are going to have the study group to discuss this
Language and cognition.
language,
right?
bilingualism and
cognition.
cognition.
Yes.
So we're going to have the study group for members.
Yes.
So you can check our social media, right?
Yeah, we'll be posting
And
soon, right?
and you can be members. You choose the kind of membership you're going to have, and you're going to have access to very
We're
exclusive
excited
content-
about that.
content.
Dude, cheers. And
Cheers.
thank you so
And
much,
guys,
everyone.
thank you so much for joining
coming
us.
to our episode of Chá Pedagógico.
Yes.
You guys rock, okay? Thank you. Are we done? Can we stay a little longer?
I can.
We can. Yes.
What?
Well, I have to go to the auditorium now.
I don't
because
have to go
we
anywhere.
can stay